on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:06 on this great Friday in the nation's capital. Also happens to be Good Friday. Joining us in 30 minutes, Scott Allen, Washington Post reporter on first day of baseball season and what it looked like at Camden Yards. Also at 8:05, Jeff Kloha, Chief Curatorial Officer at the Museum of the Bible. Maybe should be a destination for you, either literally or virtually, as they have a great online presence, too, as we venture into the holiest of weekends on the Christian calendar. I am Larry O'Connor, alongside Patrice Onwuka.
Good Friday, Larry,
Yes.
and happy Friday.
We can do both. We can chew
Yes.
gum and walk at the same time. Absolutely. Joining us right now is a good friend, Senior Legal Fellow and Manager of the Election Law Reform Initiative at the Heritage Foundation, Hans von Spakovsky. That's right, Election Law Reform Initiative at Heritage Foundation, where they actually keep track of all of the voter fraud that I am told on a regular basis doesn't exist. It's weird. Hans, you have a weird job where you actually record and detail and catalog something that doesn't exist. How are you fooling those people at Heritage that keep paying you your salary? Boy, you got a scam going on there, Hans.
Well, yeah, except that, our database, which is available to anybody, if they want to check it, we just passed 1,500 cases, proven cases of election fraud from across the country.
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Okay, Hans, listen, I don't want to get in the way of your scam, okay? You want to... I don't think Kevin Roberts is clicking on any of those links, man, because I can't... Anderson Cooper assures me that there is no election fraud, but we'll just... Let's talk about what this appeals court in Pennsylvania just determined, because... they came down with this ruling that said from this point forward, the only mail-in ballots that will be ruled as valid for counting in an election will be mail-in ballots that have valid dates and signatures on them, including on the exterior envelope. So I guess, Hans, from this moment forward, those ballots will be considered fraudulent. But in 2020, they were completely valid and counted to make that state win for Joe Biden, right?
Yeah, and look, this is a really important case, not just for Pennsylvania, but nationwide. And I'll tell you why. Pennsylvania has a statute, like a lot of states. It says when you send an absentee ballot, you got to sign it as the voter, and you have to date it. And what happened is all these groups, including the NAACP, all the usual groups, they all sued and said, listen, that state statute violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964. You should count ballots even if the voter hasn't put the date on it. And the reason this case is important is that, look, for years, the left has been suing every state that has passed any kind of common sense election reform. Things like, they challenge voter ID, having to put a date on the absentee ballot. And they've been losing under the Voting Rights Act, with some rare exceptions, all of their claims that, for example, requiring an ID is racially discriminatory. They've been losing. So what they did in this suit, and they're doing this in other cases across the country, is they dug up this provision of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which hasn't been used in 4 decades. And what that provision says is a state can't deny somebody the ability to register to vote based on some kind of paperwork problem that's not material to whether they're eligible. And remember, this was aimed at what was going on in 64 when states like Alabama were keeping black Americans from registering.
Yeah.
So what they said here was, hey, having the date on having the voter fill out the date on their absentee ballot, that's not material. You can't use that to deny their vote. And the court said, no, that provision of the Civil Rights Act only applies to registration issue. It doesn't apply to actual voting issues.
So Hans, specifically with this ruling, it is just pertaining to Pennsylvania. But is it fair to say that other states could take this ruling and potentially, or others who want to sue in their state to ensure that any law that any laws that have been passed that should be upheld, they can use this Pennsylvania case as some precedent in other lawsuits? Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is very important because, for example, both Texas and Georgia passed laws putting in an ID requirement for absentee ballots. When you send in your absentee ballot, for example, in Texas, you have to include on the form the serial number of your state driver's license. Both states were sued, and the claim was, that's not material under the Civil Rights Act, and therefore you can't do that. You can't require voters to do that. So this case can help knock out those lawsuits filed against Georgia and Texas. So it's really important case.
Hans, the other thing that's important about this, as far as the politics and the way that we discuss these issues, if we're allowed to discuss issues of voter irregularities and ballot fraud, is that this passes the common sense test. If you ask anybody, in fact, if I show up on MSNBC and I'm called an election denier because I think that things were, handled in a completely suspect, if not completely illegal and fraudulent way in Pennsylvania in 2020, I can sit there and say, all right, fine, Joy Reid, Mika Brzezinski, you tell me, do you think a mail-in ballot without a signature and without a date on it should be counted as a valid ballot? If so, tell me why. Tell me why. And also, bonus question, explain to me how your way of doing things will prevent voter fraud. And they can't answer it. It's common sense, and that's why it's so powerful, too, finally. But we didn't have this common sense during the pandemic when all of these provisions were put in place, Hans, without actual due process.
No, that is absolutely true. And let me tell you, if you checked our election fraud database on Pennsylvania has a notorious history of prior incidents involving, guess what? Absentee ballot fraud.
Yeah. Hey, Hans, real fast, there was also a development yesterday of sorts in the hearing in Fulton County. This has to do with President Trump basically saying what he said at various times in the aftermath of Election Day is protected under First Amendment grounds. And it sounds like the prosecutors are saying, yeah, you have the right to say what you want, but when you as President of the United States are saying things directly to people who are in a position of power in the government, it goes well beyond just exercising your free speech rights. Did I summarize it properly?
You did. What happened was the trial court judge, and this is the same judge who recently ruled that either Fannie Willis or Nathan Wade had removed themselves from the case. He was hearing oral arguments on the motions filed by the defendants that the entire indictment, criminal indictment, ought to be dismissed because they are criminalizing First Amendment protected activity. I think their arguments are exactly right, and I think the state's arguments, frankly, are very weak, saying that, well, yeah, you may be able to speak, but if it's in furtherance of a criminal conspiracy to overturn an election, we can't charge you. But I just don't think that fits what happened in this case.
Hans von Spakovsky, Heritage Foundation.
Thank you, Hans.
Thank you for joining us, sir, and happy Easter to you, sir.
Thank you. The same to you.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Yes, it is Easter Sunday this Sunday, as everyone is sort of gearing up. If you acknowledge, observe, and celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, you're gearing up and getting ready for a memorable day with you, your family, and the Lord. But if you're a member of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, you'll be setting aside all that resurrection stuff and salvation stuff, and instead you'll be taking a moment to observe, wait for it, Transgender Day of Visibility.
What?
Fairfax County Board of Supervisors voted 9-0 to proclaim this Sunday Transgender Day of Visibility. Now, just for clarity's sake, March 31st has been the day that has been set aside by many woke organizations to be the LGBTQ plus advocacy Transgender Day of Visibility for a couple of years now. It just so happens this year it falls on Easter Sunday, but it also just so happens that not one individual at the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors looked at the calendar and said, hey guys, I recognize what we're trying to do here, but this is going to come across as pretty offensive to a lot of people, considering it's also Easter Sunday. Either that or they fully knew that this was going to be offensive to Christians who honor Easter Sunday as the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And that's sort of part of the fun for these people.
It absolutely is, Larry. I am not naive. I may be naive about a lot of things, but this, I recognize that this holiday has been celebrated. This fall holiday has been celebrated for a number of years on the March 31st. But it's interesting that this local county has decided to wholeheartedly choose this year to do so. And so I'm not naive to believe that it's not. And here's what's interesting. So I decided to Google this Trans Day of Visibility, and I went over to the GLAAD, the GLAAD organization, one of the leading LGBTQ organizations in the nation. Interestingly, they talk about the importance of this day because of the backlash against trans people. And this year especially, they highlight one particular case of an example of trans violence against trans young people. Guess whose case they decide to highlight, Larry? We referenced...
This poor girl in Oklahoma?
We referenced next. Let me read what they actually described. This year, Next Benedict, a 16-year-old indigenous, and then they have her her letters representing what she identifies as, was killed in Oklahoma, underscoring the severe and significant impact of bullying and discrimination. This organization is actually fueling by lying about how Next died. Next was not killed because of bullying or killed by other people because of how she identifies. And they're leaving out all of the context. But again, this whole Trans Day of whatever it is called, Trans Day of Visibility is about an agenda. And the agenda is about money and the people who are supporting the agenda and trying to indoctrinate our children and exploit our children. So no county board should be adopting this day.
It is about dividing us. It's about raising money. It's about making people angry, and I'm not going to rise to that level, but they are ghouls. They're ghouls for using this poor girl's suicide as a result, it appears, based on all the evidence at hand, a result of the fact that she was abused as a young child by her father. Yeah. Her father just got out of jail for that abuse and now has been recently arrested. 2 weeks later, she kills herself. This troubled young girl has had enough in her life that brought her to the point of suicide. For these ghouls to politically exploit her abuse. They're using her abuse and her despair for their own purposes. And I'll leave you with this. Jimmy Bierman, Democrat, member of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, in adopting this resolution, making this Easter the Transgender Day of Visibility, said, get this, I'm just very happy that we're recognizing a community that has too often been pushed into the shadows. What? You can't go through a day in America now without seeing transgender celebration everywhere you turn, from getting a Bud Light to turning on college sports to watching anything on Netflix. Every single original Netflix show has a transgender storyline now, which is totally positive and uplifting. This person is living in a hole if they think that the transgender community is being pushed into the shadows. Quite the opposite. It's Christians. Christians are being pushed into the shadows. If you want to, you know what? We should have a day to celebrate Christianity.
Well, I would think that this is what this weekend is supposed to be for.
If only there was a day where we could celebrate Christians and what we believe, because we're the ones being pushed into the shadows. You know what? I've decided this Sunday I'm going to celebrate the Christian faith. I'm going to set aside a day this Sunday. And
you're going to go rogue.
That's right. I know it's controversial, but we're going to go ahead and do that anyway. It's 7:22.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6 on this Good Friday in your nation's capital. Thanks for closing out your week with us and launching into your holiday weekend the right way on O'Connor and Company. Coming up in 30 minutes, 8:05, we'll check in with Jeff Kloha. He's the Chief Curatorial Officer over at the Museum of the Bible, in case you're interested in what they have to offer this Easter weekend, either at the beautiful facility they've got downtown or also online. They've got a great online resource at museumofthebible.org. So we'll get into that coming up in a bit. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka. Happy Good Friday to you.
Happy Good Friday and happy Friday.
That's right. All things wrapped into one. This weekend, though, is not just about the Easter celebrations and so many people going on spring break or wrapping up their spring break. It's also opening weekend for Major League Baseball. Yesterday, they had a doozy of an opener in Baltimore for the Orioles. And this Monday, it's DC's turn with the return of baseball, the Washington Nationals. And Scott Allen, Washington Post reporter, is going to give us a little preview because I love this. Every year in the spring, we get an idea, Scott, of what's new. Mostly it has to do with what new food we can eat there at the park. And let's face it, after last year's season, the highlights had to do with what you were eating, not what you were watching. But hopefully this season we'll have a better time there as Nats fans. Scott, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Larry, and thanks for having me, to you and Patrice.
What's
always
new
one of my
this
favorite
year?
assignments.
Oh, sorry?
It's always one of my favorite assignments, the What's New at Nationals Park tour in late March.
I know. It's always fun
stomach.
that people in the media get to go down there and get a sneak preview, and even more importantly, a sneak tasting from the chefs. Sum it up for us. What are you looking forward to? What did you sample that you think fans are going to enjoy?
Yeah, so by far my favorite thing was a Korean hot dog from a stand that I had never heard of, but already had 3 locations in Maryland, including the mall in Columbia. It's called Sung's Hot Dogs, and they're really more akin to what Americans would consider corn dogs, except they're not super breaded. They are rolled in a sugary panko, which sounds maybe a little bit weird, but it's a perfect sweet and savory mix. They're filled with all sorts of things, from sausages to mozzarella to potatoes, and then drizzled with a variety of toppings.
Dude,
you can get sriracha mayo.
I am so excited about this. I kid you not. My teenage son discovered these on. There's YouTube videos of people who are obsessed with these. And mostly they're they're either in South Korea or they're in Koreatown in Los Angeles. But I haven't heard of them on the East Coast yet. This is huge.
Yeah. So definitely check that out. That's in section 130. That was my favorite thing I tasted. There's also a really good new taco stand it's a sister restaurant to Capo Deli, which opened a stand in Nats Park last year and is back selling sandwiches again this year. But 5 different kinds of tacos, including a cactus taco for vegetarians. They're all gluten-free. You can get them a la carte or in a slight discount for 3. Those are really good. And then you don't really crave crepes at a park, at a ballpark or a baseball game necessarily, but if you do, this year you can get them at Nationals Park. A stand called Eli's Crepes has a variety of sweet and savory options.
Oh, that has Chevy Chase written all over it.
So you know what, Scott? I'm literally scrolling through your X.com feed, and I am just salivating right now because of all these options. So I hope folks do check it out. But for talk about the home opener on April 1st. Who's throwing out the first baseball? Hold on,
are we done talking about the food? That's it with the food?
Well,
now you want to get to the game?
Larry.
Fine. I guess there is a game to talk about.
Some folks might care about some of the other stuff. So walk us through all those other details, Scott.
Yeah, no, let's hope the rain holds off. Last I saw, the forecast wasn't great. I mean, I was thinking yesterday with the team in Cincinnati, it's a good thing they're opening on the road this year because the weather was dreary here. But early next week doesn't look great. But if the rain holds off, Monday at 4:05 p.m. at Nationals Park, the home opener, all sorts of festivities as usual outside the park before the game. The bullpen will be open. I think the Clydesdales will be there again. But in terms of pregame ceremonies, former Mayor Anthony Williams, who played a pivotal role in bringing baseball back to Washington, throwing out the first pitch. Mayor Bowser announcing the ceremonial play ball. It should be a great time as usual. The Pirates are in town, and the Pirates, like the Nationals, are not expected to be great this year, but always festive on opening day.
And, have they let you know what the plans are for the year for some of the special days? I know I've really come to enjoy the celebrations around the 4th day of May, which, of course, is May the 4th day. May the 4th be with you. Are there any sort of Star Wars festivities already announced?
There are. So they're really leaning into those festive weekends, theme weekends. It used to be, they'd have a Star Wars day. This year, they've got a full Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're doing something around May 4th tied to Star Wars in terms of giveaways. There's a Kyle Finnegan X-Wing pilot Star Wars-themed bobblehead giveaway. There is
of course there is.
Star Wars dark side, light side reversible beanie, which could come in handy and could still be a little bit cold in May. They also have a Harry Potter Day where they're giving out different jerseys based on the different houses in Harry Potter. And then what I'm looking forward to a weekend in September, they're going to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the 1924 Washington Senators Championship.
All right, very exciting. Well, good stuff. It is. Listen, you're right. We don't have high expectations. But to compare us to the Pirates that's a low blow, Scott Allen. But you're right. But listen, again, it's a cliche, but on opening day, everyone's equal and everyone has a shot. And let's not forget, when the Nats did win their World Series, they started out horrible. The first 100 days of that season, well, not 100 days, but for the first couple of months of that season were awful. And then then something happened. Baby Shark happened, and they turned it around, and then they got their rings. So anything
maybe
can happen.
That's what this season holds. We'll see.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott.
WMAL's Free Speech Forum is back Sunday, June 2nd at the Birchmere. Details online now at WMAL.com/free speech forum.
7:48, and we want to tell you about something that happened. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said something, stupid and hypocritical on social media.
Is that news?
Yeah, I know. She got flamed for it. But I want to go back a couple of steps here because the origin of this story begins with a March 25th article in Politico. Okay. The headline is, Biden was planning executive action on the border, but now he's gone silent. And it's supposedly about what is going on internally at the White House regarding Joe Biden's plan to use some level of executive actions to stop the problems at the border, right? Border security. But then when you read into the article, you find this, and I will read you the paragraph. One idea that's been floated among administration officials is opening access to the cancellation of removal program for people who have lived in the U.S. for over 10 years and have citizen or resident relatives who would suffer if they were deported. If specific requirements are met and an immigration judge approves cancellation of removal, a migrant is able to obtain a green card. Let me translate that for you. One of the executive actions Joe Biden is contemplating under the guise of border security and fixing the problems at the border is to give unilateral amnesty and a green card to illegal immigrants who have been in the country for 10 years, which of course has nothing to do with the border and the border security invasion problem that we're seeing right now.
No.
And also through executive action would be completely unconstitutional and illegal. But that's buried in there, right, Patrice?
Well, obviously. I mean, listen, he is absolutely trying to create a greater magnet. If you grant amnesty to people who've been here for 10 years...
that will entice more people to cross the border illegally. Okay.
That's not going to stop that,
So our friends at the Daily Caller found that. They pulled it out. They gave it a write-up, okay? And the headline had to do with how they're contemplating amnesty. Okay. Elon Musk saw that article.
Yeah.
Then retweeted it and said the Democratic Party's goal is to import voters, which is a pretty logical conclusion.
Yeah.
When you see this. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez then responded on X with this, saying, "You're literally an immigrant." So Elon Musk, a man whose family spent over 10 years in the legal immigration process to come to this country and has obviously contributed in various sundry way, incredibly unprecedented ways to enriching this nation, is exactly the same in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's eyes to the people who are illegally crossing into this nation and then create criminal mayhem in this country. As you can imagine, the response to her stupidity and erroneous hypocritical equivocation was swift and mighty on social media. But it doesn't matter. This is what they've got. This is all they've got.
And so when she started getting hammered, rightly so, she says, oh, yeah, for everyone saying, yeah, but legal, may I once again remind you that seeking asylum is legal, too. May I once again remind her that about 90% of the so-called asylum claims coming in from this at the southern border are deemed to be are not granted. They're not able to make their claim of asylum because they have no legitimate claim of asylum. They're just being coached to say that they have asylum claims, but they're really here coming, hey, I understand, for opportunity, for a better life, and that's fine. My family did too, but you know what? Just like Elon Musk, my family, we did it through the legal process and spent the time and the money that it took to get here legally. So do not conflate us, AOC. We are not the same as illegal migrants coming here at the southern border, breaking the law to do so.
And falsely claiming asylum, and that's the key here, because she says, hey, it's legal to claim asylum, not if you're lying about it. And her fellow Democrat, Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, gave away the store earlier this week. Let me play this for you again.
Chaos at the border is because if you don't have a robust work visa program, then people who are desperate for opportunities come and they'll make an asylum claim instead.
In other words, break the law a second time. They'll first break the law by entering the country illegally, and then they break the law by falsely claiming that they deserve asylum. So either way, Tim Kaine, AOC, Democrats, they're all in favor of illegally coming into this country. And then if you stick around 10 years, Joe Biden is in favor of giving you legal status. Unilateral.